welcome back to Kerbal Space Program. In the last episode, we had finished landing on Lethe. So let's take a quick look at what we did between episodes. Wasn't really too exciting. We basically just took our Talos X, brought it down over to Lethe, grabbed our crew out of our Lethe lander, and oh yeah, I'm gonna have to clear that out manually. Grabbed our crew out of our Lethe lander, and we're sitting there waiting for our mission to Tylo to get picked up, and that's what we're going to be doing today. Now, I do have to forgive me for the cheat here. I gotta manually clear out contracts. Did that? I think we did that. Alright, so we'll clear those out. Now we're going to check and see what we got here. Oh, plant the flag on Lethe. That would have been nice a little while ago. Oh, excuse me. Ooh, sorry, had to sneeze. Nothing else. It was kind of hoping for a plant the flag on Tylo, but not having any luck with that. Oh well. Never hurts to take a quick look. So now it comes time to build our ascent vehicle for Tylo. And then we're going to do our descent stage, which is going to be a little chunkier than you expect. And then our booster, which is going to be the chunkiest of all. Alright, so first, let's get Tylo lander. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a crazy design compared to some of the other things that you've seen me make. Well, not really crazy, but it's going to be a little beefier. And this is simply because we're going to need a lot of Delta V to get off of Tylo. It is the biggest, chunkiest moon in the solar system. And the gravity well is enormous. It's enormous. And that causes a bit of a problem. More on the descent than on the ascent. Because the good news with the ascent is that there isn't any atmosphere to cause us grief. So, not as worried about the ascent. Alright, good. We asparagused that. So by the time we're done, this will probably have around 4,000 Delta V in total, which has a reasonable safety margin. So now what I gotta do, before anything else here, we gotta get some landing legs going. And we're gonna need some ladders. Now, Tylo is one of the places where we do actually need the ladders in order to get down. And because of the gravity, we can't rely on our EVA jetpacks. We do actually have to use the ladders. So what we're going to do we're just gonna do a little of this. And don't worry, I've got something planned for the other side there. That's going to need to come out a little bit. Alright, that should work. But I only need one of them. And I accidentally did two. Alright, so let me fix that again. Alright. So now we're going to test that real quick. Let's do those to Action Group 2. And what we're checking on is to make sure that our crew member can get down and make the transition from one ladder to the other, and get back up making the transition from one ladder to the other. It's been cleaned up a bit in the later versions of KSP, but I always remember having a lot of trouble sometimes in the past making that translation from ladder to ladder. So I always test it on the launch pad before sending it off, just to make sure, because it's better safe and tested than sorry and stranded. And of course, you know, as I mentioned, Tylo is not a place where we can rely on EVA jetpack shenanigans to get ourselves back up. Alright, that'll work. Alright, we're good. We're good. Always got to check that stuff. Okay. Now it's time for a whole bunch of RCS. Good there. Now on the back side, I am actually... Oh yeah, I need this. I am actually gonna bring some science with me, unlike going to Lethe, because I knew I wasn't really going to be able to recover the science. We are going to bring some basic experiments with us to the surface of Tylo. And again, you know, we've maxed out the tech tree, but we'll be able to convert all that science into money when we get back to Kerbal. And I'll do the same thing I've done with a couple of the other missions. I'm going to hide that in behind the ladder so that we can collect the science collect the science out of it. On the way back in. Alright, so now we need a whole bunch of electricity. We're going to need a couple of solar panels. And I am actually going to throw an RTG on here. And that's really just for some safety. Now we need lights. Which one of these? All right. That should... Yeah, we're good. Okay. That should be adequate for lights, I think. Just for good measure, we'll do some of that. All right. So this is our Tylo ascent stage. Nothing too strange, right? And incidentally, like this, yeah, around 4,000 delta V. That's an enormous amount of delta V. Are we forgetting anything? We don't need any comms. We don't need any probe stuff. We don't need any of that. We've got our science, at least all the science that we're going to take and care about. We've got our electric. We've got our landing stuff. We've got our control. Yeah, we're good. Now the descent stage. This is where things get chonky, and you're going to see this and think that I'm crazy. I promise I'm not crazy. The problem is Tylo, again, has the most gravity of any moon in the solar system. And it is really easy to find yourself stuck on your way down to Tylo in a descent, and you are out of fuel for your descent stage, and you start to fall like a brick. And what ends up happening is, you know, you're going to gain way too much momentum, and you're just going to crater. And obviously, you know, we don't want that, right? So I'm going to overbuild this a little bit. And trust me, there's a method in the madness, and I'm going to explain the problem with the landing profile in just a moment. But I'm going to asparagus the hell out of this. We're going to do a bunch of struts. And we'll do a bunch more struts. Okay. That is our descent stage. And you're looking at the delta V, thinking that I might be a little crazy. I'm not. This actually might be underbuilt for our Tylo descent stage. And I've got half a mind to actually stick another few radial boosters on there with more arrow spikes. But it should be enough, assuming I can get there with something approaching, you know, a stable amount of delta V left. Excuse me. All right, so now we get into the hard part. We need to get this mess over to Tylo. And you're going to see me get pretty crazy here. All right. Now we're going to do, you know, again, this is our nuclear stage. So this is going to need to have enough delta V to slow us down once we get to Tylo. And also Hopefully have a kind of enough delta V to be a bit of a deceleration stage at Joule. And there is the small chance that, like, we'll have to stage into this as part of our trans stage, because, you know, you might already be thinking in your head that the delta V requirements to get all of this garbage to Joule are going to be really high. So we're going to go even more overboard than you've seen me do in the past. Well, I think I've done this with one other thing, but we're going to do another round of tanks without engines attached. And we're going to asparagus those into everything we can. Do some fuel lines here, the same way that we would do struts. Just dumping the fuel out of those into everything. And then, of course, we are going to do some actual struts. Ugh, what a mess. Alright, so now we got to get this to Joule. And it's not going to be simple. Now, you might be thinking, like, why I'm not just reusing the design I used for Lethe for my booster. The reason is simply that this has a bit more weight to it than what we sent to Lethe. This is actually going to be a really significant booster. So before that, let me get some struts set up. Alright, good. Now we got to get this really high in the VAB, because this is going to be a significant booster. I'll just say that. Alright. And we're going to need engine plates. We're going to be using quite a bit of these engine plates. Quite a bit of these engine plates. And our decoupler, we're going to need the big one. Whoops. Wrong tank. There we go. There, good enough. Okay, and what I'm actually going to do, this cluster mount I'm going to do down the bottom. You've seen me do one of these before. I'm going to use the Vector engines, I'm going to do a big cluster of them. But it's easier to build it up there and then move it down here. Now, you might be thinking I'm going to do Clydesdales, because that's kind of been the thing, right? Well, not today. Today we're going to get crazy. Today we're going to do some liquid fuel boosters. And they are going to be significant. There we go. Yeah, these are going to be significant. And of course, we're going to asparagus all this nonsense. And we're not even close to done with these side boosters. Oh, that's not the right one. And we're going to need... There we go. Hey, why not? Cool. That looks fun. All right. And again, we're going to asparagus the heck out of these. We'll do some fairings, some aerodynamic control surfaces, just for good measure. Now we're going to need to do... all this stuff. And I know you're thinking that that might be a little overkill for a Sephiratron. Trust me, it might not be. These are chunky. These side boosters. Do not underestimate the chunkiness of these side boosters. And what all this stuff I'm doing may very well be underkill. But that, I'm hoping... that'll all be sufficient to pull them away. Alright, now for manual struts. Because, oh boy, do we need manual struts with a big monstrosity like this. We are absolutely not going to trust this to auto struts. Now, on its own, you're looking at these delta V numbers thinking that, you know, that this is fine. It's not. This is not fine. This is definitely not fine. We need more. And this is where we're going to stick on some of our old friends, the Clydesdale boosters. If I can. Well, you know what I need to do first? I need to get our launch clamps onto our center stage here. It's still going to be a bit of an issue. Let me do this. No, that's dangerous. How do I want to do this? Let me see if I can get the camera in. No, it's not going to work good. Okay. There we go. That'll work. Yeah, believe it or not, that does work. All right. And we'll do something similar over here. And again, that actually works better than you think it should. So, given actually, you know, what we were seeing there. All right. And we are, of course, gonna launch clamp those Clydesdales. And strut them good. And give ourselves some of that. Now we're going to have... I'm reasonably confident that the Clydesdales are going to run out before those liquid fuel stages. And again, remembering I can control the liquid fuel stages with throttle. So I can make sure that that happens. And that these are sent away. Now, you might be thinking, what am I doing with these Clydesdales? The answer simply is that I need to add more thrust-to-weight ratio to our base stage. It really is just that simple. We just need more thrust-to-weight ratio. All right, and who gets to be the designated victim? We'll do Valentina. All right. This big chunky design is costing us almost $1 million. My goodness, look at this disgusting mess. Oh, I almost forgot manual struts on those Clydesdales. That would have been a problem. That would have definitely been a problem. All right. Moment of truth. Now, because of the weight of this booster, I'm not going to be doing an aggressive gravity turn. And there's a good chance that this just explodes as soon as the game loads physics onto the pad. I don't know about you, but I think that's a really good looking booster. Kraken Insurance. Let's just do one last mouse over. That is our, I think, our center engine down in the middle of the cluster. Side boosters, core engines, Clydesdales, launch clamps. Kraken Insurance again. Moment of truth. Oh! Oh, it's so chunky. All right, I'm going to throttle down a little bit while we've still got the Clydesdales going. Oh, this is a chunky rocket. I'm just hopeful that stage separation with those Clydesdales ends up working out. Yeah, and you know, this is a good example of, like, believe it or not, those Clydesdales are actually adding a significant amount of thrust to weight ratio. A significant amount of thrust to weight ratio. And I mean, even with the throttle down to, you know, like 30%, we're still gaining some speed now. And it is mostly thanks to those Clydesdales, because especially when they're almost empty, they're providing an enormous amount of thrust relative to their weight. All right, here we go. Oh, and it worked. Okay. All right, now we're going to start our gravity turn a bit more seriously. We are almost out of those side boosters. All right, we are above the Kármán line, still on the side boosters. That's really good news. That separation worked well. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, did I forget an auto strut somewhere? Oh, it's a wobbly rocket. I mean, there's not a lot we can do about that. Big rockets like this just get wobbly. So this, oh yeah, I'm gonna have to be careful. This stage we're at here, trying to circularize our burn, is really important. And the good news is we can use that trick. And now that we're in zero gravity, we're going to jettison our fairing. And we're going to Kraken Insurance. Oh, man. I don't want to punch the throttle too much because this joint is ending up a little bit weaker than I had wanted. But I don't have a whole lot of choice. Because if I don't circularize quickly, this is going to start to fall back down towards Kerbin. And once we get below the apoapsis, we're in problem territory. And I am not going to physics warp this ridiculous thing. Once we get into the Rhino, I'll be a little bit more confident, but for right here, I'm not going to do any physics warp. Oh, and we couldn't circularize on that core stage. That might end up being an issue. Because we've only got 2500 Delta V on this Rhino. And it's going to come down significantly by the time we do circularize. Alright, I wanna circularize out to around, like, around 200,000. This is a slow turning, wobbly rocket. But that's okay. It's okay. Okay. Ooh. Alright, we're in good shape. We have about 2,000 Delta V left in this stage before we get into our nuclear stuff. That'll get us most of the way to Joule. And if we're lucky, that nuclear stuff will do what we need for Tylo. So now we gotta wait for Joule to get in a position. Now I'm gonna do something a little different. I haven't been doing this very much during this career because most of the other missions that I've done, even when I've been concerned about Delta V, I've usually been fine. This one, I gotta really play it safe. So I'm gonna be doing the transfer to Joule from Kerbin orbit. I'm gonna do a burn, on the night side of Kerbin, direct out to Joule. That's gonna take advantage of what's called the Oberth effect, which will be a little bit more efficient, and it'll shave some Delta V off of our burn. I'm going to have to time warp for, 15 minutes or so in order for Joule to get into a better position. I need Joule to get, all the way down here before I do my burn. So it's going to be years. So I'm going to clip here for a minute. Literally, all I'm going to do is just time warp. So I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, we're back. And we've got an intercept set up, and I'm gonna do a little bit to fix that once we're on course, kind of. Actually, I might even be able to do a little bit of that now. This part can be extremely tedious. As you can see, part of the challenge here is a lot of trial and error. Yeah, see, it's not working out as well as I would like. And that gets us a good intercept, but it's on a weird angle. That's probably, that's close to what we had originally. It's probably the best we're going to get for right now. Once we get a little bit out, we can do some fine grain adjustments. But this is only going to take us 1897 delta V, so almost 2,000. And that's about what we've got in this stage. So it's going to be a 5-minute burn. Going to want to get out to maybe around here before we start the burn. And that should get us on trajectory to Joule with our nuclear engines pretty much unchanged or untouched. And my hope is that will be sufficient to decelerate into Joule and get us on a trajectory towards Tylo. So we're going to time warp this a little bit. All right, we're going to time warp this quite a lot. Burning through fuel, but we're making good progress here. Of course, the moon is in the way, but we'll avoid it. Apoapsis slowly doing its thing. Looking at our delta V, I mean, we should get to Joule. Just a tiny bit before running out of delta V in this stage. Not bad. All right. So now I'm going to get out of Kerbal. It's slightly less delta V efficient to do some of these minor correction maneuvers out here in interplanetary space. But the problem is, it's just manipulating the camera angles and everything, and some of the fine-grained adjustments that are needed. Are extremely difficult. Yeah, see, and we're fighting the UI. That's really what that comes down to. All right, so we are out of gas. All right, staging into our nuclear engines. We have a fair amount of delta V. Now, where are we going to get at Joule here? Do we have any... Alright, that's not bad. That's not bad. 151 Delta V. Oh. Figures I'm an idiot. We started the burn a little early. Okay. That was my mistake, and it cost me. Alright, but once I get that done, I can... Well, no, you know what? Let me... I'll just do that maneuver closer. Okay. This is going to be a funky maneuver, and I'm going to have to do a couple of these corrections on the way in, because I screwed up that first one. And I'm going to use a trick here in a minute I'll show you that I think you might like. Let me just do a quick save. Alright, so we've at least got a solid intercept. What I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on Joule. I'm going to set Tylo as my target. And I'm going to play with the maneuver node while I can zoom in on Joule. That will actually make the fine adjustments a lot easier to try and figure out here. Alright, so... yeah, it's a lot of delta V to make some of these changes. That's actually a pretty good maneuver, but let me check. Oh yeah, look at that. That's not bad. That's good. That's really good. All right, I'm gonna go with that. Actually, what I'm going to do just to reset my view. See, this is something that bothers me. I don't have the ability to reset my camera. Will Alt-X do it? No, it won't. To reset my camera back to the Tylo lander. So, I'm going to go back to the tracking station and do it this way. In all my years of playing Kerbal Space Program, I have never found a convenient way to reset my camera focus back to the vehicle I'm controlling. I'm sure there's a hotkey for it, but I've just never found one. Ooh, excuse me. All right. Let's get back into our Tylo lander. That was a pretty good maneuver node. Come on. Load that big monstrosity. Okay. It says it's going to be a 2-minute burn. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set that to do the maneuver thing. So these buttons over, this is a feature I haven't been using very much. But when you've got full control, this will set where your autopilot will point. So this is going to have our autopilot pointed right into the maneuver node. And we're a little early, but I mean we can't get a whole lot closer. And again, you know, some of this we're just fighting the UI. My hope, my real hope is that some of these challenges you've been seeing here are going to be cleaned up a bit in Kerbal Space Program 2. And we've still got a fair amount of Delta V just in these radial tanks. So we're doing okay there. All right, let's take a look. Oh yeah. All right, we're gonna do some Kraken Insurance F5 saving on that, and get zipping along. That's not bad. That should be a fairly good intercept. Okay, so that came in. We have a trajectory that's pretty good. We're pretty close to the inner planets there. But I want to take a quick look and just see... Alright, so for not a lot of Delta V, we can get ourselves on a pretty good kind of trajectory there towards the inner solar system. Or the inner Julian system. That'll save us a little bit of time and fuss in a couple of minutes here. Alright, it's not bad. Not quite... Nope. Having some trouble with the camera. Not quite going to be possible to get an intercept. Sorry, this is the camera being chunky on me. Not quite going to be possible to get a good intercept the way that I might want. However, we'll still get in close, and this will make the later adjustments after our deceleration burn not too bad. Now, of course, this is going to be a really aggressive deceleration burn because we're coming in real fast. We're going to save for good measure. Okay. So this is where we're going to dump an enormous amount of fuel. And again, I'm going to speed this up just because it's going to take so damn long. Okay, that'll work, I think, as an intercept. I'm going to do a safety save. I think that will bring us in on the correct side of the planet. Of the moon, I'm sorry. So we'll find out in a minute here, but the idea, of course, is that we got to come in orbiting in the correct direction. So that we don't double our delta V consumption to circularize our orbit. Going the correct way around the planet. Around the moon. Wow. Not really with it this morning, but that's fine. That's fine. We'll make it work. Alright. Yeah, this is going to be a weird intercept, but it's okay because we actually want a little bit of an inclined orbit for what we need to do here. So I'm going to fast forward down a little bit closer to our periapsis. This should work. This should actually work pretty well. We've got a lot of delta V to burn. Alright, I might have been a little over-concerned about the delta V capacity. We got here with plenty to spare. That's not bad. But, you know, it's better to be safe than sorry with this stuff, because I don't want to have to come out all this way, you know, do an entire episode and be like 700 delta V short or something, you know, that could have been fixed earlier on. Like, I'm pretty sure that, like, having those Clydesdales on the initial booster in the first phase made an enormous difference in terms of where we're at now. All right, so that thing you see there, that's where we're trying to land. And this actually came in really convenient. Really convenient. Now the problem is the thrust to weight ratio we're going to need is going to be pretty harsh. So I'm going to have to be really careful here. I'm going to want to get a relatively low orbit on these nuclear engines. But at the same time, they don't have enough thrust to weight ratio to do like our final descent or anything. So it's going to be a little tough. So I'm going to try and get my descent down to around, like, 74. That should be okay. And I want to circularize that. And I'll do a couple of orbital go-arounds until this moves sort of down where we're trying to go. Now, because this... Oh, come on. There we go. Because Tylo is such a monster, I may have to do what I did on Lethe and reload the descent a couple of times. I'm not really sure. All right, I'm dropping periapsis faster than I want to be. Come on. All right. Excuse me. All right, that's not too bad. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to time warp a little bit and try and get this landing zone like under our orbit. And I actually expected to spend a lot more Delta V trying to do like minor little correction burns in orbit around Tylo and stuff, to get a better inclination. But this worked out very conveniently. I'm very happy with that. Oh, if I don't screw up my time warp. All right, so I think... Again, we're fighting the user interface here. We are going to have to spend some Delta V, but that's okay. And I've alluded before, doing these kind of precision landings on Tylo is going to be very difficult. There is a solid chance that I will screw this up and have to reload the descent potentially multiple times. And that's just the nature of landing on Tylo. Alright, so now what I'm going to do... Come on. I'm going to guess coming in for our final approach, I'm going to jettison all of the nuclear stuff. We are on descent. Now, I'm going to hit F5. This is going to be my reload point if I screw this up. And you'll understand in a couple of minutes why this is so crazy. So look at my speed down in the bottom. Now, the problem becomes if I burn too quickly, I won't have enough fuel, and I'll run out of fuel too high and just drop like a brick. But if I burn too slowly, is that the right way? It is not. If I burn too slowly, I won't bleed off enough speed, and I won't have enough thrust-to-weight ratio to properly decelerate. And that actually ends up being a pretty serious thing. All right, so I got to adjust a little bit more. Got to go kind of long. And I do want to say, if I find myself in the position where it's a choice between a safe landing and missing our spot, or like crashing and reloading a dozen times or aborting or something, I'm going to choose the safe landing and miss the spot, or I'll just do a clip like I did on Lethe and, you know, run the few kilometers over. So you can see here I'm burning fuel real slow, right? And my orbital speed is going down. The problem is as I get closer to the surface, it's going to take more throttle to maintain the same rate of deceleration or even the same speed. So it becomes extremely difficult. And I've still got plenty of gas, you know, left in there. But the problem, of course, is the thrust-to-weight ratio. And, you know, I'm actually going to save here, because this is looking like a healthy descent. So this will be my recovery point. Yeah, and where we're going to land, hopefully it's in that black splotch up above there. And we're coming in a little shy. All right, I'm going to have to do some time warping here. Yeah, now see, look at our velocity here. This is all right. There's what we're trying to land on. This is going to be a crash, so I'm going to have to reload. So this is the problem, that even though we have tons of delta V, we didn't decelerate quickly enough, and we don't have enough thrust to weight ratio to properly recover. So tons of delta V, just not enough thrust to weight ratio. We just didn't burn early enough. So forgive me for the reload. And I may have to clip and do this a couple of times before I get it right. And I apologize for not having a lot to say at the moment. This is going to be kind of quiet time, as I really got to focus and keep an eye on my numbers here. This is, without a question, the hardest landing in the game. So if I can cancel out my horizontal velocity, I should have enough. I should have enough fuel to do a controlled descent. If I get this on the second try, I'm going to be amazed. All right, so we're going to be short, but that's okay. I'd rather have an inaccurate landing than a crash. And our Easter egg is going to render in not too long. So now you see, again, look at my rate of descent. Better switch that to AGL. My throttle, like, I'm going to start to accelerate now, even with the same throttle setting, because as we get closer to the ground, it takes more and more thrust to maintain our speed. And we may actually not make it. This is going to be real close. Yeah, this is going to be a crash. But I'm going to ride it out just to demonstrate. So look at how much throttle I have to use just to have a very small level of deceleration. And even with maximum throttle, I'm not... And see, now if I cut... I mean, this is tough. And I still got 4,000 meters. So I don't know. I mean, I might be able to make this work. I'm gonna try it. And if it doesn't, I'll just do a reload and a clip. But look at all this fuel I'm having to burn. You know, when I talked about my my concerns about the fuel consumption on landing, like, this is why. Oh gosh, and now we're stuck doing this stuff. Oh. Alright. 3,000 delta V. That might be enough to get us in orbit. So, this is pretty close. I think... I don't want to risk saving, but... All right, we've touched down. Now I'm gonna do science and stuff. And we're going to collect all this into our science container. Because, again, we've maxed the tech tree. But... And, like, look at how much we're getting just from a temperature scan. This is gonna give us a ridiculous amount of money. And we should do a crew report. All right, so now we're going to send Valentina out on a little walk. And go see about checking out this crater. How far away are we? That looks pretty darn close. And I mean, obviously, you know, we can see it. Oh yeah, and I'm just going to show you something here. Full deflection on the jetpack, and like in a jump, nothing. So EVA pack is pretty darn close to useless. So I'm just going to run. Whoa. Whoa, that was crazy. Okay, maybe not. Because our lander's bouncing all over the place. So maybe ×2 is as good as we get. Once we get a little further away, we can speed that up once it gets out of physics. But I don't want to risk that, like, tipping over and exploding. And this is the sort of thing, like, I had it in the brain that, you know, I may have wanted to send a rover for this particular mission, send a rover to land on Tylo and do a flag planting just, you know, on a little bit easier landing along the equator or something, and just send a rover to get to the caves here. But in the end, I decided against it. Yeah, that's still bouncing around all over the place. Are these things I can run through? They are! Yay for no clipping. I decided against it just because I wanted to, plant a flag near the Easter egg. But I think the only thing I'm either going to skip or do the rover for is the volcano on Duna, because it's not really an Easter egg, it's just the highest point on the planet. Alright, it's still within a kilometer, so I'm going to fast forward this just to save you guys some time, even though this run, similar to Vol, is going to take me quite a while. So this is our cave on Tylo, and we've got Mortimer here telling us it'd be a good place to hide out from all the radiation from Jewel. He's probably not wrong, but so we're gonna plant the flag. And we'll call this Malakath 1. Hiding in the caves. Made the landing on the second try. Which is crazy. Alright, and Val gives a little salute. Now we get to run our 1.6 kilometers back. And you're going to notice I waited until I was farther away to accelerate my time warp to 4. That's because I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe the game engine doesn't do physics on objects that are further than 1 kilometer away. And where we were bouncing around there, I didn't want to risk this toppling over while I was doing physics. So this is going to be a long run back. I'm going to clip here because you've already watched the run over, and I will see you again in a minute. Okay, so we're back at our lander. Alright, and it seems that being out of physics range might have stabilized its position on the ground a little bit. So that's good. Now, this is going to be kind of the moment of truth. Is whether or not we have the Delta V to get back into orbit. Now, on paper, the, what do we have, 3,000 in this? On paper, that should be enough. But in reality, I think it's going to depend a lot on my ascent profile, and this is not an equatorial takeoff. Oh boy. Alright, here goes everything. And I'm going to burn off as much monopropellant as I can during this ascent. Just for that little extra thrust. This is going to be close, I think. But if I'm careful, this might work. Because this, our little Terrier there is a very efficient engine. Oh, I didn't even remember to do my landing lights. And I'm just burning off all this monopropellant, or at least most of it. There it is. All right, let me see if I can circularize and get into a stable orbit like above 60. I'll generally be satisfied. Oh, yeah. All right. Nice. All right. Got the Tylo landing and back to orbit on the second try. I'm very happy with how that turned out. Again, I honestly expected that to take me a lot longer. Because you all saw how tricky that descent was. I mean, that's really easy to screw that up. And, while we're up here, just so that I don't forget, I'm going to grab a bunch of science from orbit around Tylo. Most of this will be diminishing returns, because I think we've already gotten most of this science at least like once or twice. Maybe not. Uh-oh. Oh, yeah. Whew. That was... All right, now I've got some weird adverse pitch. All right, there we go. All right, let me try this again. Okay. All right, that was a little strange, but that sort of weird Kraken stuff happens sometimes. All right, and we should have a ridiculous amount of... Okay, yeah, that's going to be a lot of money. All right. So now we got to get... We got to get Talos X over to pick up Valentina from Tylo. That's actually not going to be too hard. It is going to take a while with these ion engines, because they are very, very low thrust to weight ratio, as we all know here. But we'll see how bad this is. I might not have to clip this. Might be manageable. Alright, I'm definitely at least going to fast forward this. Now, I'm thinking, because once I get into Tylo, I'm going to have to do some really high delta V burns in order to do the inclination adjustments and stuff. So I may in fact end up clipping this. Yeah, I'm definitely going to clip this, because otherwise, even with fast forward, this is going to be like 15-20 minutes. of just watching our orbit change. And it's not going to be super interesting, and I don't have a lot to say about it. So I will be back in just a minute. Okay, so we're back. We've gotten ourselves into orbit around Tylo, and we have matched our inclination pretty close with our Tylo lander. There were some problems, though. It's probably good that I clipped. It ended up taking a lot longer to get here than expected, and the reason is, and you're also going to notice I'm missing my asparagus staged extra xenon tanks. I was dumb, and I went to Vol and rendezvoused with the derelict lander that's still in orbit around Vol instead of Tylo, because I was dumb, and when I was after I had escaped Lethe and I was burning out towards Tylo, I got an intersect with Vol and just had a brain fart for a second and thought Vol was Tylo and wasn't paying close enough attention. And yep, so that was dumb, and that wasted an enormous amount of Delta V. So yeah, it helps to pay attention. All right. So now it's just going to be a matter of doing the rendezvous with our Tylo lander, which actually has our crew member in it. And this is kind of what you're going to see here. You know, this is the disadvantage to using the ion engines, and this is why I've been clipping quite a bit. Check out my electricity in the top right. So as I'm doing these burns, you know, that wasn't a whole lot of Delta V that I just went through, and it burned through my entire supply of electricity. You know, it's significant, the amount of stop and go that you have to do when you're using ion engines for this sort of stuff. Like, it's really significant, and it takes a long time in terms of real world clock. Just because you can't sit here on the 4x burn and just burn through it like you can with the nuclear engines. There, all you have to worry about is your thermals, and even then, you usually aren't going to have to worry too much. But with the ion engines, you know, once your electricity runs dry like it just did, look how much lower my rate of change for my velocity is when I was out of electricity versus when I'll have electricity here in a moment. I mean, it really does make a difference. So I'm getting a lot. Ooh, that was actually not bad for a thing. I'm getting a lot more change in velocity per second. Okay, that's not bad. That'll be sort of a good place to finish doing a little bit of our deceleration burn. So now I'm going to burn relative to the target and just bleed off as much Delta V as I can. And again, the thrust to weight ratio with these ion engines is extremely low. So this sort of a thing, I mean, you know, it does make rendezvous a little bit more difficult. Yeah, come on, get around. Get around. My hope is I'm going to be able to get it on the next orbit. So that will be really close with a minimal difference in Delta V. Come on. Maybe even up here. Went right past my node and didn't even notice. All right. Separation 10.4. All right, we are a little bit outside of our lander's orbit the whole way. Let me try and do this. Alright, that didn't work out quite as well as I'd hoped. But not to worry. I just want to do a quick retro burnout here. Nothing heavy. Alright, and all we're doing there is getting our orbits to match up a tiny bit more. Alright, so it's going to stay a little ahead of us. That's still acceptable. Oh, sorry, I want to burn away from it. Nice. All right, very little relative velocity, so this intercept won't be too bad at all. That separation looks good. That was almost a bump. Okay, so our relative velocity is 2 meters per second. I'm just going to cancel that out real quick. And we are close enough to switch to it. All right. Now, let's take all that stuff. Make our spacewalking leap of faith. And Valentina's all excited about this. I am not sure that, given the circumstances, I would share her excited enthusiasm. But it's all good. And again, as with a couple of the others, I just want to make sure that I don't clip those solar panels on the way in. They are kind of important. Ooh. Okay. We're ready to go. So from here, it's just going to be a trip back to Kerbal. And we should still be... Yeah, we're going to have to burn for a little while. But we should still be relatively close on... Yeah, we're relatively close. So the burn down... Oop, sorry about that. I bumped my microphone. The burn down won't be too bad. In terms of the inclination and everything. But yeah, see, now we're just going to be doing the drain charge, drain charge, drain charge. And, you know, you can see there we've got 10,000 delta V. We're not even scratching these tanks. So we don't have any issues there. The issue entirely is with electricity generation. And of course, the other problem is, you know, once you get further away from the sun, the solar panels do generate less electricity. You know, like when we send a mission to Moho, if we use ion propulsion for any stage of our trip, these burn charge cycles are going to be a lot different because these solar panels are going to be generating a lot more units of electrical charge per second than they are way out here at Jewel or out at Elu. So it really does make a huge difference. And there is another strategy that I don't use where people will take a couple of small tanks of traditional liquid fuel and oxidizer, and they'll use a fuel cell. They'll burn a fuel cell to help mitigate, you know, this cycle. I don't tend to do that, but, you know, it is a strategy some people use. There are varying opinions about how you have to design that in order to make it efficient. It's just not something I typically do. But I'm really happy with how this mission turned out. We did our landing on Tylo on only the second try. That's very, very good. It is the hardest landing in the solar system, no question. And the fact that we got pretty close to a precision landing out of it, it just sort of sweetens the pot. You know, we only, what was it, like 3 kilometers away or whatever from the mountains, from the cave. So we were able to get pretty far. Pretty close, I'm sorry, to the caves on only the second landing. And yeah, I'm very happy with how that turned out. I was honestly expecting to have a lot more of a difficult time than I ended up having with it. So that was good. Of course, you know, a lot of people think that Eve is the more difficult landing, and it's not, because you've got atmosphere, you can do chutes. Eve is the more difficult engineering wrong one. Eve is the more difficult engineering challenge. It is not the more difficult landing, or even the more difficult takeoff. Because, you know, assuming you've done your engineering correctly, the takeoff profile for Eve is very similar to taking off from Kerbal. You know, it's more of an engineering challenge than an actual, like, mission flight challenge. Tylo's definitely the hardest landing. The hardest takeoff, I don't know, maybe Eve, maybe Lethe. It's hard to really say. Lethe's, you know, as you saw, that can be pretty tough. We had some Kraken on the first go. But now that we're finished with Jewel, I haven't really decided what I'm gonna do next. I'm gonna have to take a few minutes and take a look at like where the different planets are once we get back to Kerbal. Whether or not it's gonna make more sense to wait for Elu to get around or what. Because again, Elu isn't hard. Elu is the hardest intercept because it's a tiny planet and it's got this weird orbit way out in the middle of friggin' nowhere. So, you know, Elu is the hardest intercept. But the actual engineering is not hard. I'll be able to use something like a Talos X with a very light lander attached to it. You know, I might even be able to do like something a little bit more traditional with the lander in the same launch, and you know, rely on ion engines for most of our Delta V. That absolutely can work. The mission to Moho, similarly, the intercept is the harder part. The actual mission itself isn't bad because, you know, the gravity's analogous to, like, I think it's closest to Vol, or it might be a little closer to Tylo, but the landing and stuff isn't super bad. You don't need a whole lot of Delta V to get back in orbit. You know, you're, as I already mentioned, you're close to the sun, so doing the electrical charge isn't as much of an issue because you can rely on solar panels a lot more. When I go out to Elu, when I eventually do that mission, you're going to see me load up on RTGs. And that will be mitigating the solar panel issue to a point, just in terms of these charge burn cycles with the electric power. So hopefully on this burn I can get out a Joule. And because, you know, as with a lot of our other missions returning to Kerbin, because Delta V is no object at this point, we've got still over 9,000 meters per second of Delta V. I'm just jumping out a Joule just to make the maneuver node planning a little easier. It really is a decent looking kind of design. I think that came out very well. You know, a lot of people, they only use the ion engines for probes because these charge burn cycles are really annoying. But I find that using the ion engines for something like this Talos X, it makes the engineering so much easier. The actual, like, mission design. Designing our craft and everything is so much easier. Because the Delta V, relative to the length of the rocket, you know, the length of the trans stage, is a very strong ratio. So, alright. Of course, we ended up on the stupid funky orbit. But, alright, so now I'm going to have to do some maneuver node planning and everything and get my butt back to Kerbin. This is going to take a little while. I am going to clip here, just because, again, you know, I could be at this for 15-20 minutes for the maneuver node plus the burns, and I don't really have a lot to say about it other than that it's tedious. So I will see you guys back in a couple of minutes. Alright, so we're almost back to Kerbin. I ended up having some problems. I exited Joule in a weird spot and had to move ahead quite a bit in the orbit in order to get this intercept with Kerbin that was anywhere close to being a good intercept. So here's the catch. Look at our speed. We're coming into Kerbin at over 4,000 meters per second. This is going to take a little while to decelerate from, but I wanted to show this. As you know, I really do hate to keep clipping some of these episodes, but I don't want these episodes to be 3.5 hours long. Some of these missions really do take quite a while to perform and record. So part of the issue, for example, here, trying to burn, like, we've got more than enough Delta V to do all of this, right? But it's going to take so long to burn off all this Delta V. Let's just to demonstrate. Look at that. That's 44-minute burn time there. 44 minutes of burn. That's insane. So, I don't even speeding that up like 10 times. That's 4 minutes of just sitting there watching a thing, watching the periapsis go down. That's not really too exciting, and that's really the reason I've been doing a lot of clips. It's really just to save time after this comes, out of the editing and all of that. And if you haven't done yourself in your own career mode, progression in KSP, if you haven't done missions to some of these more distant locations, or if you haven't used ion propulsion or even nuclear propulsion before, that's the downside, is that some of the burns just take forever, and you have to plan a ridiculous amount of time to dedicate to it. Or, you have to save and quit out, and you're not doing it in one sitting and all that. I've been recording all these episodes in one sitting. A couple of them I've recorded, like back-to-back 3 or 4 episodes over the course of an afternoon, that sort of a thing. So it does take a lot of clock time. So I apologize for all of the excessive clipping in the last 5 episodes or so since we started doing stuff with Jewel. But really, that's all there is to it. I mean, the amount of time it takes for some of these burns is ridiculous. So I will see you back in a couple of minutes after I've decelerated a bit lower into Kerbal. Alright, so we are just about circularized here with our retro burn. That took quite a while, and I want to demonstrate something. So I want you to look at the angle I'm at relative to the sun. All right. Now, watch my electric charge here in the top right. I'm going full burn, and it's not really going down. The reason for that is how good these solar panels are and the distance we are to the sun, and that I have all of them in full sunlight. Now, I'm just gonna change a little bit like this. Now look. Now I'm bleeding electricity real quick. So it really does make a difference. The distance you are from the sun, the amount of the solar panels that you can get, into direct sunlight and everything, it really does matter. And I just wanted to demonstrate that for a second while I had a relatively good opportunity here. And when you're out at like Dress, Jewel, Elu, doing some of these weird burns at like weird angles relative to the sun, and you can't present all of your solar panels on a good angle to the sun while you're doing the burn, and it can be really tedious, and that's one of the things that causes the charge burn cycle with the Xenon engines. Now, the other option, of course, and I'm sure by now, I've been recording these episodes like well in advance. By the time this goes up, the entire series will have been long recorded. But I suspect there might have been, a comment or something by now. Someone suggesting that, if I want to cut back on the electric burn, that I just don't use a cluster of so many damn ion engines. Okay, well, that's a thing to do. The downside is these burns are going to take even longer because your thrust to weight ratio is going to be so crappy that even though you're not draining electricity, even like out of Elu or something, um, your thrust is just so low relative to the weight of your vehicle that there's not going to be any way, to avoid some of these burn times. I mean, like if I shut down half these engines, ignoring the fact that I'd still have their dead weight, to worry about. I mean, it would double, triple, quadruple, the amount of time it took for some of these burns. My burn back into Kerbal was like, what, 46 minutes or something ridiculous like that. Had I done that with fewer ion engines and a smaller thrust to weight ratio, it would have been less tedious, and I'm going to crank in insurance before I separate. It would have been less tedious from the point of view of like human interaction. I wouldn't have needed necessarily to do the charge burn. But the burn, instead of 40 minutes, I mean, how many hours do you want to wait, even under time warp? That could have easily surpassed like 3 or 4 hours of a burn if I had fewer ion engines. And that's kind of why they end up not being super popular for return capsules and stuff like that, is just because it's so damn tedious. But I always err... I shouldn't say that. I don't always err on the side of efficiency with my designs and the engineering, but I try to. And when it gets to some of these later game missions, where you've got all these nuclear stages and all this other crap underneath it that just gets really tall, the ion engines provide an extremely good density of delta V relative to height of the stage. And I personally just find a lot of value in that. So, all right, we're coming down over the highlands, and where exactly are we? Oh, that's a nice little area. Haven't really been out here too much. I think I flew over here once on my way into the mountains to do one of the monolith flags. Sorry, been talking a lot today. All right, so I'm going to dump some parachutes in a minute. Coming back in from Lethe and Tylo. That is going to be a big... Ooh, why are we lopsided? It's kind of interesting. It's fine, though. Gonna be... Do we have some, like, weird excess... Yeah, I don't know why that keeps happening to me. It's going to be a big chunk of money from all that science that we're returning. And if we had not maxed out the tech tree, the amount of science that we can retrieve from Jules' moons is just absurd. All right, let's see what we get. Come on, load it up. No kraken, no kraken. Not bad. Not bad. And we got all kinds of milestones and contracts and everything else. Not bad. Yeah, we can't cancel it, the milestone stuff. Alright, so I want to show you something here real quick before we close out the episode, because this is important. the position of Elu along its ecliptic ends up being a bit of a big deal in terms of when we launch a mission. I try to launch missions to Elu when it's going to intersect along the ascending node so that we don't have to worry about all this crazy inclination. Elu's getting pretty close to an optimal launch angle. So I'm actually thinking that I'm going to do Elu next. Just because it takes so damn long for Elu to come along in its orbit into the next transfer window. So I think for our last three landings, I have one other mission I need to do with Eve, and we'll get to that when it comes time for Eve. We're gonna do Elu, Moho in there somewhere deep. There we go. Moho, and then Eve. So a lot of people consider Elu to be the hard one. I don't. I consider Eve to be the hard one, and Tylo, frankly. So I'm going to say that this is an episode. Thanks for watching, as always. And check out the next one where we go find ourselves a snowman.